Okay, you're now moving supposedly from the background of the Greek philosophical world into the world of monotheistic thinking. This is not a course in religion. We look at texts that were used by religious communities, more specifically texts that emerge from the best thinkers in these monotheistic communities. That's what 202 is all about. For the background, you would need a full 201, as well as a full 207I, because those are the only places now in CS where 201, of course, you all know, you get the Greek world fully and the Roman, and so you'll be quite ready to move on. 207I gives you the background, the scriptural background, the theology, the Sharia, Islamic theology, looking at the Hebrew scriptures, the Christian scriptures, the Islamic scriptures. And all that is the proper preparation as it used to be, before we would ever teach Augustine, Al-Ghazali, Ibn Rushd, all these people that you're taking this semester. But this is the way the course is now. So please, it's good for you to know the context always. We cannot fill in everything. We've tried in the beginning of the semester, with last week's lecture particularly, to try to give you some background in Plato, Aristotle, and Plotinus. The way I handle these things usually is I look at Plato, and particularly the simile of the cave, and particularly the main topics that are in the cave. First of all, that the cave is an image of human society, where everybody is using their minds incorrectly, or even perversely. And so in the cave, Plato sends us the message that he had been inspired by Socrates, but he continues on with it, and then Aristotle. Basically that human beings need a wake-up call. Naturally speaking, we're only interested in our own pleasure, our own wealth, our own honor, our own. The cave is the prison of the self, really. That comes to be spoken about later. The prisoner of the prison of the self. So the cave story primarily is to introduce you to that main way of understanding our own human existence, our own human condition. According to Plato, of course, and always you are asked to think about these things critically, which means evaluate them from your own point of view. But to be able to evaluate and really be a critical thinker, you have to, first of all, exercise empathy. You have to listen. You have to listen and really understand something that you're engaging with. Otherwise, you don't have any respect for it. You can't be critical if you don't have respect. Right? Critical means, you respect other points of view. You especially respect people who disagree with you, topics that disagree with you, so that you can listen to them carefully and see what they're saying, and not just what people tell you that they're saying or what you think you know about them. And this is the importance of primary texts, and that's why you have to look at texts. If this is, for many of you, this is your first CS course. Texts are very important because it gives you a direct contact with the author, with the person you're dealing with. It's a sign of respect. I don't want somebody to tell me about Augustine. I want to, okay, tell me about Augustine if you like, but I'd rather then look at the texts themselves, see what he is saying, what he means by it. So, very quickly now, the background, and very important, I think, the Greek, many things from the Greek world. One main thing is the simile of the cave, to put you into that kind of a human situation, an existential situation. Existential means you're using reason, but you're using more than reason. You're using reason and experience, because wisdom and truth comes to you. Of course, if you're not using reason, nobody's going to be able to speak to you or listen to you or anything like that. So reason is taken for granted. We're all rational. That's what the Greeks had. Man is the rational animal. We're distinguished by our reason. Now, how does reason work upon the world we live in? Well, we study, we do theoretical studies, we read books, we read, all kinds of theoretical stuff. But the main source of human wisdom, not technological wisdom, is the wisdom that we're getting every day from our interaction with other humans as we develop through life, as we see what's happening internationally, how people are dealing with each other, how people are, what rules they're setting, how they're playing games with nations, the game of nations that, we're in the middle of it here in the Middle East. You get, truth about life that you can then think about with your reason. And this is a major contribution of Augustine in philosophy. For Augustine, the philosopher, and that's what we're primarily looking at, he wrote 1,000 works. Most of them we would call, articles in a refereed journal. But he wrote 2 great books. One is called The Confessions, and this is an autobiography. And that's why we choose this book. If we could choose only one book to introduce you to this kind of thinking beyond religion, because an autobiography is, by definition, or ought to be, if it's honest and if it's real, ought to be existential, meaning not just rational. We get lots of people talk. Put away your mobiles in the back room or leave, please. In the back seat, please. Hey. Back row. Either, get out or put your mobiles away. Okay, I'm sorry. I want to teach you to be serious for your own sakes. Okay, this is AUB. People come in and watch what we're doing. All right, and when they take a look at you, they think this is a kindergarten at best. Please, I'm really very upset with this. Other teachers are very upset. Teachers coming to give lectures, stop coming when they see this happening. And this is AUB, and you're getting a degree from AUB. So please, don't make your teachers to be policemen. Come on, we're not even paid to be teachers, so they'd have to pay me much more to be a true policeman. Okay, I'm coming back now to the main topic. Augustine's main contribution to philosophical thinking is an existential approach to truth and knowledge, which in Augustine means he was a thorough Greek and Roman thinker, the best of his times. Monotheism, his mother was a monotheist, but he had rejected it. He thought the Bible just simply does not compare with the great Greek and Roman literature and philosophy. But then around the age of 30, he came in touch with people who could explain the scriptures and explain monotheism and explain what he thought he had rejected, because they were fully rational, as intelligent as himself, but they had lived monotheism and therefore had the knowledge that comes only from living it properly, the knowledge of its corruption that can hit it, but also the knowledge of the best that's in it, and that's what you want to keep from anything you're studying. And so Augustine was convinced. He was convinced finally, after deep thought and thinking and all of this, he was convinced of monotheism, the truth of monotheism, the truth of the Christian scriptures. But then he had a problem of doing something about it. And this you want to think about for yourself. Knowledge alone isn't enough to get you to do what you know. The Greeks generally had not thought of that. The Socratic formula was, once you know, you will do. All right? Think about this for yourself. So always test this on your own. Test philosophical theories. Do you always do what you know? I know I don't. All right? I'd be in much better health now at my age had I done everything I knew I should do. All right? And so he focused in his philosophizing on the human will. The Greeks and the Romans had focused on reason. He was full of this aspect of scholarship and knowledge and all of that. But he had not had any serious experience of the knowledge that comes from living a community life. He had difficulty with his will. He says, I knew that I wanted to accept monotheism, but I didn't want to do it because I knew it means I have to change my life. I have to change some things I'm doing. I have to. And so for some time he just couldn't get his will to cooperate with his reason. And now this was Augustine struggling with should he accept, the monotheism or not. But universally, more importantly for you and me today and for all the centuries after him, it put into our minds that don't believe that you can really know who you are and do your best for humanity, the two great ideals of the Greeks. Right? Make sure you really are more and more knowing who you are. Know thyself. And balance is best means do everything in the best possible way for whatever is your role. Student, do it in the best way. Ruler, do it in the best way. All right? Reason should get you, once you know, because for the Greek and the Roman, the problem is ignorance, blindness, immaturity. All right? Coming into the monotheistic world, the problem is not knowledge, the problem is exactly, supposedly for monotheism, humans knew God, walked with him in the garden, and he was very close and everything. But the first humans decided to go their own way, as Khalifatullah, as Islam puts it, as image and likeness of God, as the Bible puts it. They had great responsibility that they had to rule over the earth the same way God wanted to rule over them. This means you can't be just selfish. You can't just do what you want. They wanted to be their own gods. That was the original temptation, called original sin, but don't get into theology. Simply, humanly speaking, we are always being tempted to want to be our own gods. We don't want anybody higher than us, whether it's God or whether it's something like that. We want to be our own gods. That's the story of the Garden of Eden. All right? The one thing they were asked not to do, they had all the trees, which means, rule this earth, get into science and technology and everything else you want to do. You're the Khalifatullah. You're the one who rules the earth on behalf of God. It's your responsibility. Okay, but responsibility. Rule the way God rules. We wouldn't have the world we have today. All right, so put God aside if you don't want to get into religion. What does this mean, humanly speaking? It means, first of all, you have to really take more care, more observation, more empirical observation of how you behave. Do you always follow reason? Is it really just ignorance that you do, when you harm someone else? Or is it in one way or another a betrayal of someone else? This is the monotheistic world. In monotheism, we sin. We don't just make mistakes. We're not just immature. We do that, of course, but that's not serious. Nothing is serious unless it's something we really know, and we consciously decide to go against it. That we know, and we our own reason tells us this is true, this is what I should do, and then you go against it consciously. You're sinning, and sin means you're betraying. You're betraying, first of all, God, if you believe in God, but just simply humanly speaking, when you sin, you're betraying a fellow human. And if you don't believe that all humans are brothers and sisters, then you're outside of monotheism. But for monotheism, from day one, all humanity are the direct product of the one God. And the meaning of this has always been understood that all of humanity was meant to be the family of God. All right? And therefore they were, doing what they're supposed to do over the earth, making the earth really wonderful. Okay? Image and likeness of God in the Bible, in that traditional society, meant you should rule the earth the way you, as a first son, meaning responsibility here, rules over your father's estate. Image and likeness of God meant like being a first son to a human father, all right? So the analogy, of course, doesn't mean son, because in polytheism they all had children, and this causes great confusion when you get into monotheism. Son does not mean the same thing as son means in polytheism, where, they slept with beautiful women and they got children, the gods, Poseidon has Cyclops, and Cyclops, and et cetera, et cetera. This is a totally different world when we move out of the world of the polytheistic societies of the Greek and the Romans, but we see their best thinkers, what they brought out of the polytheistic culture. That's what we study in 201. They bring us Homer, they bring us Sophocles, they bring us Plato, Socrates, Aristotle. All this came out of the polytheistic world. All right? Now in 202, we supposedly have this as background, and we want to see what did monotheistic communities produce. That's what we're looking at. What did monotheistic communities, and there are many. There's no one thing called Christian, one thing called Hebrew, one thing called Muslim. It generally covers something that unites people who call themselves Muslims or Christians or Hebrews. But within, you have many theologies, many philosophies, many ways of understanding when you want to understand this in a human universal perspective. And that's what you'll be doing in 202. All the people who are doing that in one way or another. But to understand the first thing about our humanity, and perhaps Augustine's most important contribution to philosophy, was because he was a great Greek and Roman thinker, had absorbed all that reason can give you and reason can challenge you with, and understanding what is ignorance and blindness and immaturity and lack of freedom. He now comes into the monotheistic world, which challenges the human being to take on their own responsibility. Responsibility becomes the main thing in Augustine. All right? Don't blame God. Don't blame anybody else. Don't blame your parents. Don't blame that. All that affects you. You should come to know and understand it so you can treat it and deal with it. But just the fact that you think about it is your freedom. That's your power. Develop that. Develop that power to be active, to do something for yourself and for humanity. And that's your will, not just your reason. You develop your reason, because if you don't know things, you can't do anything. But the main focus is the will. And so all philosophies of the will that come after Augustine are all influenced because of Augustine. So that's one major contribution this gentleman has made to universally and humanly. Wherever the will becomes focused on, he says the will defines who you are. All right? Not your reason. You may be not so intelligent as someone else, but you may have a better will. You want to help. You don't want to be a hypocrite. You want to serve others. Your will is better than so you may be, maybe less intelligent. I may be less intelligent than the rest of you. That's obvious. But, maybe my will is better than you. You can transfer that if you like. But if you think about these things. The will, your own will. That's your responsibility. Everyone has a role to play. There's no fatalism in any of the great philosophies. There's fate always. But fate simply means recognize you're not absolute. Fate means you have a limit, but it means different things in every culture. And when you forget that, you start to bring in Greek and Roman and Far Eastern ideas of fate into monotheism. So you come into, qada qadar, understood in this kind of predestination way, that as if, whatever you do, you're going to kill your father and marry your mother. So if you took 201, you would see that this was a main topic for the tragedians in the Greek world. Oedipus is fated to kill his father, marry his mother. Does he just sit back and wait for the day when he kills his father and marry his mother? No, he uses reason. He runs away from home. He's a wonderful man. He saves the city he goes to twice. He tells them, he's presented like a wonderful democratic ruler by Sophocles. Does everything you can do. He's the perfect role model for the human. But he winds up killing his daddy, marrying his mummy. So fate in the tragic world is doom. There's a curse on us. So fate means something negative. But fate never means fatalism. Fatalism is you and me, what we do. Do we really think that we're just sort of puppets, we're just sort of determined? We're determined by many things, but the fact we speak about determinism is itself going beyond just simple determinism. So fate can mean a tragic fate, like for Oedipus. It can mean the wonderful rationalistic fate that Socrates dreams of. By using reason properly, he believes that when he goes to his death, he's not afraid to be killed. All right, they want to kill him. He's not afraid. They bring in wasta to set him free. He refuses to take wasta. He's not afraid of death. I've been living a good life. If I wasn't living a good life, I'd be afraid of death because my reason tells me if I'm living a good life, I'm going to be rewarded. My reason tells me. I don't need religion to tell him that for Socrates. And if I haven't been living a good life, why should I expect anything other than something bad? Because many of them believe there was only Hades. Everybody goes to a negative place when they die. All right? Socrates says, human reason tells me that what the tragedians are teaching you and what Homer taught you isn't the truth. All right? But what they had in common, both the rationalists and the tragedians, and they bring this into now the monotheistic world with them, is finally the human being has to do something. He has to be proactive. For the tragedians, is the model of Prometheus. Have any of you ever heard of Prometheus, by the way? Anybody know who Prometheus was? Samir Prometheus, or Muhammad Prometheus, or no, you never met any Prometheuses in your life? Okay, it's all right. Don't worry about that. I mean, someday you might, but Prometheus is sort of the this isn't the one I thought I had. Okay, malish. Don't worry about it. Relax on Freud's couch while don't worry, don't let that disturb you. I'm trying to do a lot of things in this one lecture. That's why I'm really depending on the teachers who have had 201 and they know what I'm talking about and all this to help put it through to you. But the notion of what we do is, if I think I just sit back and do what comes naturally, survival, get the most for myself, dabbir halak, يعني شو بيقولوا له حمار, I love Hamir, but Hamar who doesn't go through red lights or cheats or doesn't that, subtly, that's the better word. All right, this is the natural way that we think. This is Plato's cave. In Plato's cave, even the greatest philosophers of the day were the sophists. And the sophists were teaching you, as many of us still teach you, that life is all about you, Habibi, and your reason. Use your reason to get the most for yourself. Come, and we will teach you how to make the lesser argument beat the better argument. You kill somebody, come to us, we'll teach you how to make an argument that he killed you. And I'm giving you the extreme. But philosophy could be about, so in Plato's cave, there's everybody in his society of the time. It's a critique of his society. Nobody is using their minds properly. All right? Of course, for Plato, Socrates is the one who is bringing Athens out of all of this through what he was doing, by challenging everybody to think, by cross-examining their argumentation, leading them to see how, their own argumentation was wrong. That's why they wanted to kill him. Imagine somebody going around today to the poets and the political people and the university people and sort of, really arguing with them on a serious level and leading them to see how all they're really concerned about is power, all they're really concerned about is their own wealth, their own image, their own stuff like that. Whereas they present, we're concerned for Lebanon, Mahek. We never do anything except for the good of Lebanon. That's what they tell me all the time. And I believe my politicians. But that basically everybody is in a cave, and that the philosophers who teach you that power is everything in life, use your reason to get the maximum power at every level. All of these are in Plato's cave. How do they come out of the cave? Well, the reference is Socrates. What Socrates did, he challenged them to think that no. Life is not like that. Power is not going to bring you happiness. Truth only is going to bring you happiness. Come back to philosophy. Philosophy, the term means the lover of true wisdom. Not just the wisdom and the truth that you can make use of for your best thing. Now, how did they come out of the cave? I'm assuming you've all read the cave and maybe even discussed it in class. How does he come out of the cave? One person only. So it means it's not something everybody is easily can do. But this is the way to enlightenment. How do we come out of the cave? Do they all come rushing out of the cave? Anybody read the cave? You had your hand up. One person comes out, but how does that one person come out? Okay, he's released, but is he released and then he's eager to come out? Oh, how wonderful. Okay, he resists. Okay, we need a shock in our lives to start to use our minds truly properly. We can be using it at a very high level, but we're not using reason humanly for true wisdom, for true happiness, for true goodness of humanity, until we recognize how much we resist the truth if it doesn't suit us. All right? I don't know about you, but I'm happy to receive truths that I want to receive. When somebody challenges me with something that I don't like, I'm not happy with it. I want to I want to remain in my comfort zone. Have any of you heard that? Okay, there's a comfort zone for everybody. No matter how intelligent they become, we naturally form a comfort zone. Don't shake me. Okay, Socrates represents, he called himself a polis fly. These big flies that sting a horse and makes the horse run. He called himself, he was like these flies for the polis. The polis is the Greek community, the Athenian community, and it meant more than just a city, or specifically there. Polis really meant what today we would say humanity. Right? So your concern for humanity is your concern for the community beyond yourself. Okay, so this is this is the background for both. So the simile of the cave. It's difficult to come out. We resist, all right, but it's worth doing. Is the message. Because once he does that, once he resists, once he resists resisting, and he starts to come up, he comes into, the real world. This is what life's all about. I've been going, I don't know where I've been going with what I think life is all about. This is the true way to, and it's basically seeking truth, because truth makes you free. Truth gives you happiness. Truth, real truth, not my truth, the truth that suits me, the truth that gives me power. That's the sophist. There's no truth for the sophist. There's only that which will give me power. All right? And I call that my truth. This is sheer relativism. So, coming from the cave, then he comes out. But notice that in the cave, only one person comes out. So there was this elitist view of who can come to true knowledge. All right? But this wake-up call in Augustine becomes what happened to him when he confronts monotheism, when he has to confront it seriously for the first time. It's been easy for him to reject it. There's been nothing serious around him to kind of attract him to it, nobody to explain it to him. But because he was seeking the truth all his life, when he did come across people who were serious about it, who were living their faith, who were, and could help him to understand, he took it very seriously. He started to really look into it, and he came to the rational truth that this is the truth, this is what I should do. And then, as I've told you before, his will didn't want to, because it meant giving up his mistress, it meant many things he didn't want to do. All right? So it helped him to understand better our human struggle. All right? And this is what Plato was trying to tell us in the cave. There's a lot of common things in the great thinkers of the world, all right, about our humanity. They have different conclusions about God, the cosmos, all of that. But about our humanity, you'll find a lot of, and that's what unifies us finally. If we agree on what we agree with, we can then move on to the things that we disagree with. If we start with the things we disagree with, we get the world we live in. Okay, basically, for Augustine then, let me just tell you what this sheet is. We used to have 2 full lectures to introduce you to the whole work, which I've been doing now, and then a full lecture just on the book itself. I'm having to do all of this because it's very important. I hate the superficial treatment of anybody in this program. And so to just jump into Augustine with no background and try to read it as if it's the latest magazine or something like that. To understand what Augustine is doing, that's why autobiography is extremely important. Many thinkers after him said the same thing. Goethe, Hegel, Nietzsche, all believed you cannot understand, you cannot read somebody's text if you don't understand the context and the human context and the social context that they're in. Augustine is, therefore, he's written many works that are straight philosophy, okay, arguing with the philosophers of the day. We choose for you in this kind of a course because it's not specialized. CVSP doesn't specialize. It leads you into, if you wish to specialize in something, but it mainly should introduce you to the person you're dealing with, the culture you're dealing with, in as broad a way as possible. So you don't just get brainwashed or you don't just get one person's view of something, all right? This is critical thinking. If we're forming you to critical thinking, we're forming you to think about everything we tell you, to not just accept what we tell you, but to listen to it, try to understand it, but then test it throughout your life, not just at this minute. That's the kind of course you're in. It's difficult for most students because they're used to, they get a set of material, they memorize it, they burp it back up onto a sheet, and they get a grade. This is not education. This is making of you a better computer. Formation, that's Plato, back to Plato again. Education is formation of your mind, opening up your mind to as broad a perspective as possible, and as critical about your own self, and as critical about what you're being taught, what I'm telling you today, what everybody's teaching you. That's what we're trying to train you in the humanities at the University of Liberal Arts, and in this particular course. So the first page, for anybody who wishes to make use of it, this is really for the teachers more than for you. I cannot possibly go into all of this, but all of this would have made sense to you had you taken 201, had you taken some of the, the scriptural stuff before this. But since we didn't, this is kind of a summary of some differences as opposed to many, many similarities between the Greek world and the Abrahamic world. Okay? The monotheist world, basically we're calling the Abrahamic because all 3 religions claim Abraham as their source. So between Abrahamic thinking, all right, and there are many ways that it goes, but sort of the mainstream way that it has been understood throughout the centuries, all right? And the main sort of ways that you can understand from the Greek tragic and rationalistic world of 201, and just some differences there. So I'll just choose a few of them there, and then I can't go through all of them. But basically, of course, there are 4 main categories that we always used to use, and that was the human being, because humanities, that's the person who's studying it, who's thinking about it, and that's the person who wants to learn more about themselves and about humanity. So the human being, the human race. Okay, we used to say man in the capital M, but since people think that means a rajul, not an insan, now everybody has to then, qualify it, he, she, and the human race. All right, so the human race, in the image and likeness of God, is the way the monotheists have understood it up to this point, and then when Islam comes, Khalifatullah, meaning having one basic thing in mind, that basically what happens on the earth is your responsibility. You don't usually hear that, Mahag, people want to disparage something they don't agree with. They'll tell you all sorts of other things. But that's the primary meaning if you read the scriptures. If you read Genesis 1 to 11, and then the rest of the Hebrew scriptures and the Christian scriptures up to this point, and if you understand the Quran, basically it's telling you, you, Habibi, are responsible. Fate here is a good thing. That's nice that there's fate, because the fate is God. And this limit is God, and this limit is perfection and goodness and Rahman, Rahim, Mahabba. So you see, fate is in every culture, because simply telling you, human being, you're not absolute. There is one thing that's absolute. In the Greek world, it was the cosmos itself. There was no unlimited power. The gods, each of the gods was limited. Zeus gives more evil than good, Homer tells us. All right? Apollo cannot help Oedipus, when he wants to know why does he have to kill his father, marry his mother, all he does is repeat the prophecy. I see a horrible future for you. You're going to kill your father, marry your mother. No help from the gods. So that's one way of understanding fate in a tragic way, where it's negative. It's a doom. It's a curse. You've got to always be careful. No matter how happy you are today, you never know. Tomorrow you might wake up like Oedipus. He thought he was the best and happiest and all this of men, and suddenly it turns out that he is the one who has killed his father and married his mother, and totally not knowing. So there's no sin in a monotheistic sense. Totally unconscious. But he breaks a rule, because the system is rules, laws. There's nothing human in it. There's nothing mercy, compassion, mahabba. There's no give and take in the Greek and Roman cosmos, all right? It's rationalistic for Plato. So he gives you some comfort. They tell you, no, but this fate is not like the tragedians are telling you. It's good. Goodness, Plato tells you in the simile of the cave. The sun in the simile of the cave is goodness. Goodness is at the heart of everything. So fate there takes on a much more positive meaning, all right? And in monotheism, fate takes on the meaning, not only is God rational and all that, but God is also merciful and forgiving and parent-like and looking at, taking care of you, trying to get you to do your best, etc. This is what how fate is different in so many different systems. So here, basically the first main thing, of course, is dualism versus monism, okay? There's only one God, as opposed to, there's only one final reality, the cosmos. So the oneness in the Greek and Roman world was the cosmos itself. It has always existed. It includes everything, including the gods and whatever you think is there. It's all within the cosmos. All right? Now here you have the notion that, no, the ultimate absolute power is outside of the cosmos, has created the cosmos, and the cosmos is not to be worshipped. Nothing else is to be worshipped. They're simply creations of this one God. That's the basic, of course, difference between the thought pattern, the way people think about their lives in the monotheistic world as opposed to in the Greek and Roman world. Okay? And again, Rahman, Rahim, Mahabba, these terms are used for the absolute in the monotheistic world, as opposed to, just simply Moiri, the shares, the fates that nobody can change in Homer's world. It's beyond you, yani. You have no influence on it, and it does not care about you. It just cares for the system. We want to keep the system going. So whenever a community or a country becomes like that, only concerned with a system which it has created, and then punishing everybody who doesn't follow that system without any concern for humanity, for their, for etc., then you get this kind of thinking. We're living in a world that's fixed and given, and so there's no God. There's simply a given order of things, a got. G-O-T is a simple way that helped me understand the difference. A given, so I can't change it. That's the fate. Order, so it's an order. There are laws of things, of everything. So don't look for mercy, don't look for compassion. Ammo Oedipus, that means you and me. Don't try to avoid a horrible doom, a horrible curse that might be on you. Do your best within it, but you're never going to change it, okay? That's the difference between the view of the divine in monotheism and some of these other things. At best, as you see in Plato's simile of the cave, what is finally responsible for everything is the sun. And the sun means goodness. So whatever is happening, goodness is controlling it, all right? So these are some of the, some of the differences and the points of agreement between, of course, the Greco-Roman world and the Abrahamic world. Okay. It's impersonal, basically. The basic divine, the fate, the cosmos, what rules everything is basically impersonal. It's not concerned for you and me in our personal existence, our existence as subject. We're object, not subject. And that's the heart of existential thinking. By the way, don't confuse existential with existentialism. Existentialism are some schools of thought that popped up in the 20th centuries, some of them Christian, some of them atheistic, but which were using this basic approach to truth and knowledge that you get in Augustine. Okay? Use reason to its utmost. Use it properly, use it carefully. But reason on its own cannot tell you who you are as a human being fully. You have to turn it onto your everyday experience. Existence precedes reason. Your everyday existence precedes whatever else you do with it. Reason, very important, but your own everyday experience so that reason can build on it. And this is what Augustine comes to in his philosophy of understanding. He says, true understanding is reason, developed very well, of course, reflecting upon experience, right? And he puts it into the religious terms of believe in order to understand. But then he continues, he says, understand in order to believe. Taking it out of its religious context, the theological context, in philosophy it means to fully understand you have to experiment, empiricism. So believed never means blind faith, by the way, for anybody serious. That's what the enemy of what would like of faith would like to tell you. Oh, faith, that's just blind faith. What's blind faith? Everybody has reason, and at least they're using their reason if they want to continue, and they have some reasons for believing. But you can develop that understanding, and that's what he was saying. His first approach was negative. He believed, but he rejected. He tried it out, but rejected. But then as he developed his ability to really experience it much more deeply, to understand it much more deeply, reason, working on now his experience, gave him an understanding of monotheism. So keep that in mind. Whatever you think you understand, it's not just what you read about it and its theories and how well it presents itself, it's how well you test it, critical of it, test it in life, try it out, experience it, and it takes years before you really reach final understanding of anything that you're as serious in life. This is the Augustinian existential approach to philosophy, focusing on the will, focusing on existence, meaning every day, socioeconomic, political, interrelationship, and relationship is key here. That's why in monotheism, covenant replaces the word cosmos as a concept, as the main concept. In the Greek world, it's the cosmos. The more you understand the cosmos, the more you can get along. You'll know where you belong in the cosmos. For the monotheistic world, it's all about covenant. It's all about faithfulness. Faith doesn't mean faith believing in something. It means being faithful to whatever you really believe is true. That's what true faith means. And in a religious context, it means, if you continue to believe in your religion, it's because you're really thinking about it, you're really trying it out, you're getting experience, you're understanding it better, you're looking at people who disagree with you and seeing what they think. That's mature understanding, the two things together. So the cosmos is impersonal, whereas covenant is personal. So in monotheism, God makes a covenant with the human race. And there are many covenants made with the human race. So what this means for your mindset is that this is really how you should think about yourself. The world itself is interacting with you in a personal way. Right? And it's taking into account your motivation, your freedom or lack of freedom, your ignorance or knowledge, it's all taking all that into account as you proceed into the fullness of your life. So the personal aspect of covenant replaces the impersonal aspect of cosmos. And so you have the divine law, the Torah. The Torah, Hebrew scholars tell us, originally means that which is given by God, not the law. When it was translated into Greek, it was translated as nomos, because in the Greeks, the main thing is the nomos, the law. And so Sharia, unfortunately, within monotheism, starts to become a rigid, set of rules. And you take the whole personal aspect out of monotheism, you lose monotheism, generally speaking. Monotheism is all about, if it's anything, it's all about the personal interaction of the absolute with the human. And therefore, as a human, what's all about is how you interact with other humans. That's what life's all about. Not how much you know of the cosmos and et cetera, et cetera. That's very good. But your final, who you are, is how you relate to others. Einstein, in a letter to his sister just before, shortly before he died, he said, I've been looking for all the forces in the universe, and if you should know something about that, you'll get it in some course. I've been looking for all the basic forces that affect our life. But he says, I've always suspected, now I'm sure, there's a force behind all of this, and the only word I can give it is love. This is Einstein. So don't think that you're ever, as a human being, no matter how technology and science develops, you're going to be able to say the final word about everything that's affecting you. There are many things affecting us, the negative and the good and all that, but you discover the basic aspect of your own humanity as you use your reason upon everyday life, and especially relationships, how people relate to you, how rulers relate to the international world, the game of nations. They're trying to do their best for us here in the Middle East, when you take a look at how people relate to other people, Augustine tells you, when you see how you relate to other people, you'll discover that sin is not just a religious word. If you understand it, it means treachery, faithlessness. Someone has been good to you and you stab them in the back. Adam and Eve, supposedly God was so good to them, they stab him in the back. All right, the human, Adam and Eve represents that. So when we sin, when we kill somebody, we're betraying that human being. When we steal, we're betraying that human being. We're not just breaking a law. We're breaking a law. Law is very important. It's the vertebral column. You need to know. But the viciousness of sin, humanly speaking and philosophically, is you're betraying another person. Religiously, you're betraying God, but if you don't have to believe in God to accept the meaning it has for universal, all right? You're betraying someone. When you commit adultery, you're taking somebody's husband or somebody's wife from them. You're betraying somebody. So sins are not just something bad as such. Sins are something is bad, but you are making use of it. You're doing it, and not respecting other human beings. All right. So this is a main message of monotheism. Responsibility, Khalifatullah, image and likeness of God. All right, this is what Augustine discovers in his own life, and he puts it into philosophy. Okay, these are some of the things on that first page that would have prepared you better to understand him. On the second, I just have time to just tell you what's on these pages. Your teachers will have to take you through with them. On the second page, that would have been the second lecture on Augustine, but I can't skip that first part to put you into the atmosphere. Your teachers can easily deal with Augustine as such. But read some of those items there, and it might make some sense to you. The context for Augustine, he went into all the major philosophies and thought patterns of his day. He lived them. He experienced them. He believed. And then using reason upon them, he understood. And for Manichaeism, for astrology, for skepticism, for Platonism, he tried them all out, and then he rejected them. So trying something out, believing in something, does not mean accepting. That's only the final result of believing. Believe means explore, look into it, try it out, think about it. All right? When belief reaches serious faith, then your will and your reason together have accepted it as really true. So basically then the Manichaeans were against sex and marriage. They're the best person there, because for the Greek and Roman world the problem is the body, matter, sex, okay? Monotheism comes and tells you these are all created by God, and therefore if you call them bad, you're a kafir. God created sex. God created body. God created this. Why are they bad? What's bad is the will, the way you abuse them, the way you misuse them to betray others, the way you misuse them. All right? It's the will that's the source of all misery that's come into human life. The good message is that God is in control, so he's always pouring in good things to damage control. But the humans are free. He was serious in making us Khalifatullah and making us the image and likeness of God. He's given us freedom, but not freedom to destroy everything, but the freedom to get to move along with things. But fate in monotheism means good news. It means no matter what is happening at this moment right now, it's only momentary, it's only transitory, all right? But look at all the good things that are happening. How on earth would you believe that we still have as much good as we have in the world if you read the history of mankind? The history of war after war, oppression after oppression, and hypocrisy after hypocrisy. The New World Order, the new Middle East order. Wonderful. We're enjoying all the new Middle East order here, especially if you're in Iraq or Syria, and if you're in Lebanon for those 15, 16 years, if you were in Cyprus when Ammo Kissinger started off his whole... I'm sorry if I bring in names, but I'm trying to tell you how one way of thinking. You're going to disagree with it totally, but to understand it, this type of thinking tells you when you look at the world today, the miracle is the good that's still there. Okay? You would expect what Plato had said in the Republic. If we don't do something about this in a radical way, we're going to stay in the cave and then don't complain about wars and misery. They just come out of a horrible war and misery. Why is there so much misery? Why is there so much misery? Why is there so much misery? Oh, it's God's fault. Oh, it's my environment. It's the politician. It's that. Okay. Augustine brings us back to ourselves. We ourselves are contributing to the evil and contributing to the good. And the more we contribute with what we know for the good, the more history will progress in a good way. The more we join the crowd and do the evil, then you wonder how come the world is still as good as it is. And of course, in monotheism, of course, there's the promise of that true life is, anyway, this is just a rehearsal for true life. That true life is, if there is an eternal God, this eternal God is going to give you eternal life as well. But that's the religious aspect. Socrates thought it was just rational, not religious. That, if you are doing your best, your reason tells you that afterlife is not going to be hell or Hades or something like that, but it's going to be good. Okay, now he tried Manichaeism, two gods, because this is a Far Eastern thing coming in from the East, which pretended to be monotheism, pretended to be Christianity, and some scholars say that if it wasn't for Augustine at this early moment in the life of Christianity, Christianity in the West might be Manichaeism, two gods, right? And that's why there's evil, because one of the gods gives evil, one of the gods give good. But how anybody could ever believe that was monotheism? You might agree with it on its own, you say. But when one system tries to pretend it's another system, that's where you need critical thinking. Manichaeism is as far away from monotheism as anything. All right? But they were forceful, they were all this. But one of the things was sex and marriage. And Augustine was he loved sex. Even before he believed God created sex, he just loved sex. And so he was doing what came naturally in the Roman culture. He wasn't doing anything that he thought was especially bad or anything like that. So basically, that's why he didn't fully go into Manichaeism. The reason why he didn't go fully into that is personally because he didn't want to do that. But he meets one of the great gurus of Manichaeism and thinks he's going to meet somebody really, because he's very intelligent. He's very scientific and intelligent. If you read the whole of the Confessions, you see how the kind of mind that Augustine had. He found that this guy was, there's nothing there. People were just following blindly, and there's no serious intellectual content there. The Donatists, me only, my religion only, my group within my religion only. All right. So the Donatists, he preached, he was teaching in the city of God and all of this, that the will, the good will, goes through all of humanity. The evil will goes through all of humanity, and God's people are everybody who is using their will in a good way. And the best way you can discover this, because of his religion, of course, is to live the Christian life. All right, but he refuses all sectarianism, all sort of my sect, only my way of understanding Christianity, only my way of understanding. He rejects this totally because it was being. These were powerful groups in his day. The Pelagians, you don't need God. Just do good things. Follow the Sharia, follow the Ten Commandments, and God will have to give you heaven, You can congratulate yourself, and you can have him congratulate you when you die. You can tell him, well, you're lucky to have me because I kept the law. I kept the Sharia, the Pharisee in Judaism, and anybody in any of these religions who thinks that's what it's all about. So the Pelagians believed you don't need God. Right? And the whole thing about monotheism, seriously, is that there's an interaction between God and the human. And if there wasn't this interaction, you couldn't do anything more than just follow your own survival instincts and all of this. So no room for human merit was the opposite of the Pelagians. That comes into Christianity through Calvinism and the Jansenists in the Catholic world, where they start to bring in predestination for the first time into monotheism. It comes there. In Islam, it comes in Al-Ash'ariyya, but hopefully your teachers will help you to understand how the Ash'ariyya had a specific reason why they wanted to say no one has freedom other than God, because they thought this would be denying God something. They were not really dealing with our responsibility as Khalifatullah. They were not, and the Quran itself neither gives you enough for one or the other. The Quran gives you, it's not a philosophy thing. Philosophers, theologians come and they choose what they want to say. So the Ash'ariyya, for very good reasons, were disagreeing with the Mu'tazilite in Islam. And it's from that source that you start to get the notion of qadar and predestination in Islam, which if you follow it without understanding it, you're back to the Roman and Greek world. You haven't shifted yet into the monotheistic world. So fate means something quite different in each system, and you have to understand why theologies came into account. Usually it's because of the situation. So in Christianity, when Luther formed what are now the Protestant churches, Calvinism preached predestination, that everybody deserves to go to hell. All right? Nobody is perfect. Nobody is pure. When you're talking about a pure, perfect God, everybody deserves to go to hell. That's justice. So God chooses some people to send them to heaven and chooses some people to go to hell. This was rejected by all the East, by Catholicism, and by most Protestant churches today. All right? But that's where the thing came into Christianity, predestination. So I leave it to your teachers to follow the rest of the stuff there, which is very important, but I cannot do it in one lecture. Apologies for keeping you so late. 2 minutes late. Woof.